something around that time.
No. What about the draft?
Maybe we'll see.
Come on, man. I need it. I need it. Oh, looks like we are live. Let's ride. Look, man, it's what we're Pistons. Keep it real. I like that name. I like that you like that name too, man. What did you tell me when we were talking about this?
I say that all the time too, and I always try in the draft evaluations. If you don't know, I do the draft evaluations here for Woodward Pistons on the Woodward Pistons YouTube channel, which is where you're watching now. And I've been doing draft evaluations for a while. The comps, I try and get like 1-to-1 comps on draft evaluations as close as possible. I don't like comping guys that are like top 5 in the league or like, top 10, 25 player of all time, because I think that's unfair to the players, right? But also, if I dislike somebody, I don't want to just bury them. So I always try and find what I call the keep it real comp of like, where's the in between in that? Even if you do see shades of like, somebody's an all-time great, but you got to like tone it down, because again, it's unfair to be putting the comp on it. And I mean, I'm going to poke you a little bit. The Dwayne Wade, Jaden Ivey comp, I think that one's totally unfair to Jaden Ivey, to be like, oh, he's like one of the top 5 shooting guards of all time. He's going to turn into that. That's something I try and keep away from, and be like, all right, come on, let's keep it real and try and find something that's less than top 5 shooting guard all time.
That's why I wanted this. I thought, you know what, man, Steve and I think that we think the same ways, but in different ways, man, if that makes a lot of sense. And I think it creates some pretty cool conversations and scenarios. Because in a lot of ways, I agree with you, man. I agree with you on that, on the notion of overall the type of player that Dwayne Wade was. I mean, come on. Man's in the Hall of Fame very quickly after his career for a reason. I think that that's a goal that Jaden Ivey should be looking at. But in terms of overall skill set, no. In terms of some of the things that made Dwayne Wade great or allowed him to be able to capitalize at all levels of the court, that 3-level scoring, 3-point mid-range, getting into the paint, yes. Now, where a lot of people, and you said this early on, where a lot of people, when they talk about Dwayne Wade or compare players, how many of them are talking about the fact that Dwayne Wade was an all-world defender?
And also an all-world mid-range shooter. Like, he came into the league having a bag of mid-range dribble moves and shots that guys hope to get in year 10. So like, that's just unfair for any guard just to like be comped to D Wade, because there will never be another like him.
No, you're true on that. Hey, and that's why I like Steve, man. It's this aspect of notion of keeping it real. And when we're sitting here and we're looking at all of these players and we're trying to figure out who they may become, the one comfortable thing that I see here is that a lot of these guys, like Cade, like Ivy, like Duren, I believe they have an opportunity to kind of just be themselves. They have some really, really cool traits about them, some really, really unique things. We talked about, hey, can Duren beat Drummond? Then you look at the stats at the end of the season, you're like, ooh, what were we talking about? What limit were we putting on this man? It's just like, what are we doing? Let's back up here. And you know what? During in the media day, in the exit interviews, the media sessions, he was just like, nah, I knew I'd be playing. I knew I'd be playing from day one. And it was just like, okay. Because, there were questions. There were things. I remember there were reports. We talked about it a little bit. And just because we didn't know. After the first Summer League game, though, we were just like, yep. So it's like, it's cool. With an Ivy, yeah. I'm still going to push the envelope and the agenda. I have to. I want to see Ivy really, really push to the levels of his skill sets and his athleticism and his speed kind of says he can get to some rarefied air. But I feel you on it, man. Break it down to me a little bit more, man.
Shout out to 313 Sports Guru. He's right. Defensively is where Ivy has the most work to do. He just dies on too many screens. Not really like a second effort kind of defender. The biggest concern to me and why I was down on Ivy, I think I had him like 9 on the board last year, is because he looks like a different athlete, like a lesser athlete on defense than he does on offense. I don't want to say he's just a straight line offensive guy, but that's like it. And yeah, like Daryl Cross, you're right here. Everybody sucks on defense on this team, right? Everybody. But Ivy's particularly damaging because if you're playing Cade and Ivy together, then you want Ivy to be the point of attack defender. And if he's going to die on screens, that's like the number one thing that he needs to work on. Then that's a big red flag, because he's the one guarding the point guard. He's going to be guarding those guys. And if you're just dying on every screen, and then your big man and everybody behind you have to make up for it, then forget it. You're just going to be, Ole defense, let them inside. That's part of it as well. And just like any rookie, every rookie comes in too handsy. I think there are very few rookies that come in that play defense with their hips rather than their hands. So he'll have to work on those other regular things as well. My main thing with Ivy, though, is stop letting yourself get put on the other guy's hip pocket. There's too many times where he's getting stuck on the other guy's hip. And it's like, you are too fast. You are too much of an athlete to let that happen.
And he's smart, man. He's a good basketball.
Yeah, exactly. That's the one thing, too. Like, if anybody says he's dumb, he's not. Look at the way his shot selection works on offense. You can tell he knows, like, where to go, what to take, but why that doesn't show up on defense. Why that doesn't show up on defense. That's why he's so frustrating to me, because I'm like, I know you're not stupid. Look at what you know on offense and operate like a Neil Ivy's son. You've obviously been coached up in that regard, but on defense, it's just like that's the one thing. If there was only one thing, I'd just be like, why are you getting put on a guy's hips so much? Like, that shouldn't happen with your athleticism.
Look, I got a question about Cade and his defense real quick, but this conversation kind of brought something to mind about Ivy. And I guess we'll kind of start that in with the Cade Ivy kind of backcourt question. But with Ivy, that's something that he stated, and we talked about this on a couple table talks already, where he said, about midway through the season, I had to be real with myself. And I started realizing that my defense was costing our team wins. That's being real. You're talking about a rookie coming in. That's being real, man. That's real.
And that's honestly, like, a lot of the answers that I heard from everybody at the press conference was like, man, we suck. I mean, translate into that. They didn't come out and say it, but things like that of, I'm costing my team wins, or like Durham being like, I know I have defensive awareness stuff. That's super encouraging.
I love the person.
Yeah, it'd be one thing for them to come in and be like, man, I should be rookie of the year. Like, man, I had a really good season. And it's like, yeah, but come on, man.
We didn't hear them talk about that. They were more or less like, bro, we trying to compete for the play-ins by next year. We need to get better defensively by next year. And they did say this. Nobody gave up. As it relates to learning to compete, it's as it relates to learning how to play against better teams, how to learn how to play against different wrinkles and such. But as it relates to going out there and really giving it their all, they did that. Now, in terms of knowing what that throttle feels like, look, if you've ever driven a stick shift, it's different versus when you first starting off versus where you are when you're comfortable, you know how to ride that boy, man, and let it kind of loose a little bit. Let it grind sometimes, because you know your car. I can let it kind of grind just a little bit longer. You know what I'm saying? And that's where I think that our guys are going to get to. I believe that as they learn, like Cade said, coming from year 1 to year 2, he's like, now I know how tough I got to work, how hard I got to work, how much I got to put in. He was like, even the ways guys are defending me, the little secret things, the little stuff that they try and do, how the second defender tries to come over. And that, man, that's what was making me excited about Cade's second year. And in the limited run we got, 26-6 was good. That 3 great game stretch right before the Boston kind of injury clunker game was really good, and that's what I wanted to see. But you know what I believe the Pistons really missed? And I wanted to ask you this question before we talk about, Cade Ivy backcourt. What do you think about Cade's defense? I really felt like he was a plus on defense. I haven't honestly, sat down and looked at it all, but just kind of from a number standpoint, but looking at it from just the film, Cade Cunningham to me was a better defender than advertised. And I think the Pistons lost a lot in the backcourt when he went down defensively.
Yeah, so before coming out of the draft, I always said Cade is Devin Booker on offense, but Jason Tatum on defense. Now I think I can throw out the Tatum one because of how great Booker has looked on defense this playoffs. I think Cade would be that exact same type of player.
I was wondering where you're going. I was
you can rely on him on both ends, but you also know, like, in the regular season, like, yeah, he's going to compete just like Devin Booker is, but he's also saving in the tank. And also Booker's not like a top athlete, but he understands positioning and like team defense more than anything. I think Cade is much better in that role too, at shooting guard too. I think he should be shooting guard and small forward. My gut says to keep him away from being a point of attack, point guard defender. I think he will do it. He is definitely one of those guys that if you say, hey, go guard LeBron, go guard KD, his only answer is like, no problem. Even though it's going to be a problem, right? He'll do it. He'll compete. He will never give up. But ideally, you want him guarding like shooting guards, James Harden type of players in the playoffs that like get more with craft and stuff. And his size can give somebody like a James Harden trouble, and onto some small forwards as well. But he is more of this like help side. And the one thing you cannot underrate about him is the level of communicator he is on defense. He is definitely a captain on both ends. He lines up everybody on offense. He also lines up everybody on defense. Between him and Beef Stew, they have that foundation for defense. Because if you don't have those guys of like, hey, go here, I know what we're doing, this is my role, and this is how you're supposed to supplement us, and we'll continue to communicate like that on defense, then fine. And I think Beef Stew is more like, you're an idiot, I'm gonna punch you in your face if you mess this up. And Cade is like, yo, bro, like, come here, let me talk to you real quick. So yeah. I've always thought Cade was good on defense, but he's also one of those players that's like, I know how to conserve my energy. I'm not just gonna go 1,000% all the time, because it's a long game and a long season.
Yeah, Daryl Cross said, I think that Cade is capable, and I don't think we want him to do that job. So it's like, other than Killian right now, no. You know, it would be good to, I mean, am I being unfair to anybody?
No. On-ball defense is where they really lack, especially at guard. At guard, they have Killian, and then that's it. Like, if you ask for anybody else guard, like the best point guards in the league, Killian can do okay, but everybody else, no.
Yeah. All right, real quick, so we can get to these other topics real quick. Cade and Ivey, man, what are we expecting out of this backcourt next season? You know, for me personally, I think that Ivey showed enough that he can work with Cade in the backcourt. Enough versatility, enough off-ball ability out of both of them to be able to work. Enough basketball IQ on the offensive end. Obviously, defensively, we've already talked about that, so I'm not even going to rehash that with Ivey. But I do, just from my point of view, I do believe these guys can work. And I think where it's going to really help is clutch time, and when those double teams start to come back to Cade Cunningham a lot because of the gravity that he pulls in. But, Steve, I need you to keep it real. Man. Tell me about this backcourt.
So on episode 1 of the Woodward Pistons draft show with Bryce Simon, we talked about Scoot Henderson. And I asked him, like, how would it work if Scoot got drafted with Ivey and Cade? And his idea with the three of them is like they all three start the game, but then one of them goes out and they're rotating in and out, and then it just depends on who finishes it. I still think the team will do that with Cade and Ivey, where they're going to start every single game, and then they're going to rotate them in and out to where Ivey's basically running like the second unit when Cade goes out, and then Cade goes back in. They obviously need another shooter at shooting guard to really like help supplement both guys with spacing. So like Alec Burks is there. They probably need another one to maximize that spacing at small forward. So that would be my gut in terms of when they play together. I think Ivey has to be more of the off-ball shooter, which is good. I think his catch and shoot numbers were a lot better than his off the dribble game, which is going to take a while to come around. I also feel in my gut when watching the games and rewatching film, there were too many times. There were not too many times. There were more times where Ivey took like hero ball threes off the dribble. I don't ever remember him doing too many of those off the catch. And I feel confident enough in Ivey as a shooter now that like the Cade double teams, Ivey can make them pay at like 36%, something like that, to where somebody has to stay attached to him. And the other part of it is like attacking closeouts for both guys. I think when Ivey has the ball and drives in and somebody still stays attached to Cade, or vice versa, they just really need to work on that idea of attacking closeouts, because they both have great handle. Ivey has that great first step. That's where I think they're going to work best, is when both of them know how to attack closeouts the best way possible. It's just going to get defenses off guard and know that like they can both knock down shots. They can give me a good fake, and then Ivey's in the paint in like 2 steps, and then Cade gets to that mid-range where he's sinking it at like Chris Paul levels already.
It sounds so good, bro.
Yeah.
I'm just over here in bliss right now, because that is the pinnacle, and it's not something that we have to necessarily hope. We just have to see it. We've seen these guys kind of put these skills already on film as rookies, as young players. Obviously early in the season, it wasn't necessarily a mesh, but the development that Ivy showed and the type of connector, the type of player that Cade Cunningham is, man. And then on top of that, you've heard what they said at the press conferences. These guys want to make it work together.
Yeah,
Not because of the type of players they are, but also the type of people that they are.
honestly, it's less about them too and about whoever is screening for them. That's the one thing that is banana. This whole rebuild is like the team still does not have somebody who's a consistent screener. They need like 3 guys. I still think Beef Stew is getting better in that regard. You would hope Jalen Duren, that's like the main thing he works on this offseason with how big he is. He can be a brick wall that is immovable. And then Bagley is okay, but you ideally want somebody better than that too. And Stu was working more on those pick and pop games. I think if they had another guy they brought in that could be a pick and pop threat, who's a really good screener, that would just unlock a lot of different things for Cade.
I wish
that's more the thing.
I think Horford, bro. I don't care.
I know, yeah. I mean, Grant Williams and PJ Washington are 2 guys that are free agents. The only problem is you would have to overpay them because they're restricted. But somebody like that,
Yeah. Hey, Jalen, what's up, bro? Table Talk member, Woodward Pistons platform member. We got some fun things on the way. I need y'all to keep May 16th on the calendar as for the NBA Draft Lottery Show brought to you by Woodward Pistons and Woodward Sports. It's going to be on the main channel and everything. We're getting that planning underway right now. But also need you to keep May 20th on the calendar as well. Ashton, the trainer. Shout out to Ashton and Cannon Cunningham, Cade's brother. Hey, they're doing this 3-on-3 tournament out in Dearborn. I'm going to put some more information out on Twitter again, so definitely check the socials. We're going to put it out there. Hey, we want you all there. We want to meet everybody. Hey, Mr.
Give me extra small, man. I'm trying to look swole over here.
Hey, look. Come on out. Sean Murphy's going to be here. Jeff Freddy's going to be there. I'm going to be there. We're going to try and get Jaden and everybody else from our crew can make it out there to be out there, say what's up. I saw Ashton just tweeted and said it's going to be some celebrities, some local celebrities out there. So, it's going to be a fun time, man. I look forward to it. I'm trying to see if we can also do something either the day before or the day after so we can get our run on as well. Well, we'll see because, I'm trying to get out there and hoop. I don't really, I don't play ball on Saturdays due to, religious observation. So, but I will go out there and support and be with the family. It's going to be a fun time. Definitely shout out. Hey, yeah, we're going to definitely going to do some stuff. Stay tuned to the live. You're going to see it go up. I've been talking to some of these guys to see what we can do to make some stuff work. So kind of see the smile on the face. It'll be a fun time. Hey.
Yeah, I saw Jalen barely get up and dunk, man. Looks like you got to get on that squat rack and you'll be there looking like Derrick Jones Jr. soon.
Bro, I'm getting it back too. Man, like I said, that surgery in December, it kind of took me out. Starting to get it back. I've been kind of in the room, in the weight room, man. Hey, and then Kid Kool-Aid, he over here right next to me. He think he can take me out. He over here cross me up. We're gonna get that footage up too on his page. But look, real quick, this coaching search update, and then I want to be able to end with Brandon Miller versus Scoop. The coach search update. I think Kevin Ollie is probably like the most divisive of the 3 at the top. We also heard Charles Lee, and somebody that is quickly becoming one of my favorites, Jaren Collins. For everything that we liked about Charles Lee, I feel like Jaren Collins is that with like a little bit more experience and a few more championship runs. But I wanted to be able to come to my homie Steve to keep it real. Bro, tell me about these 3 candidates, because I do believe as well that Kevin Ollie, when you look kind of into who he is and why he continues to stay employed post-basketball, post his playing days, it's because of his connection with people, his professionalism, and his ability within player development. And those are the roles we keep seeing him get. I do think that some people are missing just a little bit on him, but you're very, very well studied and well-versed in these things. Keep it real with me on these candidates, bro.
Yeah, so Kevin Ollie, 6 years, head coach of UConn. He played 13 years in the NBA as well. I believe Kevin Ollie was on 11 different teams. So if you're like, I don't remember Kevin Ollie in the NBA, that's probably why he was the Ish Smith before Ish Smith. Apparently, I meant to look in to see who's on more teams there. But shout out Ish and Bruce and those KCP on the Nuggets now. Hopefully they get a championship. But Kevin Ollie, spent those 6 years at UConn, was dismissed for paying players, which if you're mad about it, go somewhere else and complain about it because it's legal now, right? It's just like, come on, whatever. His predecessor was also doing it, but he didn't get fired for whatever reason. Kevin Ollie won a national title as well in those 6 years at UConn. If you want to think about those teams, he really stressed three-point shooting. That national title team, they had like four different players that took like 112 or more three-point shots. And really when they started losing their shooters, that's when they started to lose a little bit more as their three-point shooting went down. So did the record as well. After he was dismissed, kind of kicked around, ended up back with the Overtime Elite program, which is where the Thompson twins are now. Help with that startup league. If you look, his title is something like head coach or whatever coach. That's a little misleading because he's not on the sidelines coaching. He's more of like the head of development where he oversees all the players and he coaches them up more in practice and gets them to work on certain things. But he's the guy overseeing basically the entire program, which I believe is why the front office really wanted to look into him. Sneakily, I think they also want to get some intel on the Thompson twins in this interview process since he helped along that track. And they are a big mystery to a lot of people. I know last week,
article, bro.
There was that quote of like, oh, they're 20-year-old playing against high schoolers. And it's like, okay, whatever. If you're mad about it, then I guess you didn't like Kevin Garnett or Kobe Bryant or, T-Mac or Tyson Chandler or some guy named LeBron James, because they probably played against worse competition in high school as well. But Kevin Ollie, again, had that time at the Overtime Elite. And so now that's why he's a head coaching candidate here. I also think sneakily the front office is interviewing him because they might also want him in some kind of a development role here in Detroit. I've heard that floated about by a couple of different people. That would make sense. That would make sense too, of like, hey, come back into the fold. That way we can help out your coaching career. And we like what you do in terms of player development. And the team's already done that with like Coach B, right? Brought him in that regard after, crashing and burning in Cleveland. So Kevin Ollie, again, he's probably number 3 out of everybody's list. Even if you like him, like I do like him myself, the part of it that's tough is jumping from the NCAA to the NBA. There's not a fantastic track record of a lot of guys that do it. It's like Brad Stevens, and I can't think of the last guy that was super successful as a head coach in the NCAA and then jumped to professional basketball, NBA, and did well. Normally, it's like your Rick Pitino's, right? Where it's just like, man, this is a disaster. And it's clear that they more or less like recruiting or keeping their guys rather than being one guy in an organization where they don't get to run everything. Next guy is Jaron Collins, he and both Charles Lee have been in the league about 9 years as assistant coaches. Jaron Collins did play in the NBA for 10 years at the center position. He's a Stanford guy too, so he's a smart dude, well-spoken, knows more than just basketball. And he's going to be like the giant. It's going to be funny if he does get a head coaching job one day, because he's like 6'11", 6'10", and like 250. So I don't know, too many refs that are going to want to overturn his challenges, just get stomped out. But mainly with the Golden State Warriors for 7 years, from 2014 until about 2 seasons ago, which would be 2021 season. And then moved over to the New Orleans Pelicans, where he's been the last 2 seasons. He's the one that I know a little bit, don't know that much about, of like what his actual role is in terms of player development. But you see with the Golden State Warriors, like if you just look up even images of him on Google Images, he's working with like everybody, analyzing film, analyzing data to help out. And that's one of the things too I always like in a head coaching candidate is you see they don't just work with one type of player, or they don't just work with one area, but they're able to address and talk to the superstars all the way to the guys that are like just clinging onto a spot at the end of the bench. And experience in 2 systems where defense and three-point shooting are stressed. Obviously, New Orleans, the defense has been problems, but it's more because of Zion and Jonas being the front court. That's going to cause problems and hurt your defense, but they have still invested in guys like Herb Jones, Jose Alvarado, and the other guy's escaping me, Dyson Daniels. So it's clear like they're trying to iron it out that way.
Yeah.
And three-point shooting is stressed in both spots. So I think that's good. again, the thing that gives me pause is I don't know about like offensively minded, what his scheme is or what his preferences are, or like what he actually draws up on the side. The things that I would like to see is they stress defense, which he definitely has. And number two is offensive innovation, to where you at least try things out and you're not just stuck in like your system. And when it fails, you don't have a counter punch to it. That would just be the only thing. I don't really know much about Jaron Collins, and probably all if you're just there in the room and there in the staff, you're the one that knows what he's drawing up and all that. Or speaking
Yeah.
to other players, like be able to understand what that is. And then
Yeah.
the last guy, Charles Lee, again, been an assistant with Coach Budenholzer for 9 years, first in Atlanta and then over in Milwaukee, which is where he has now worked his way up to the associate head coach, meaning he has more responsibilities. If Bud goes down or gets thrown out, he's next in line. Was a high-level player in the NCAA at Bucknell. And the Bucknell teams that he played on in like the late 2000s, I think it's like 05 to 07, those two teams were some of the best that Bucknell ever had, able to make it to the second round. I believe the team he had as a senior had something like an 86% win percentage or something ridiculous. So point guard that played that way, and you see that play out on the sidelines as well with his smarts and with his ability to see the whole court and coach up a lot of guys. In Milwaukee, I at least know he's been developing a lot of the young guys. And if you just go on YouTube and see some of the film that the Bucks have released or see interviews and things that he has done, it's more about coaching up the young guys and making sure that they know what to do and they can find a role. This year, the Bucks released a video about 3 weeks ago. They do this running series where they interview a player and they talk about like their role or they'll watch film and things. And the only coach that did it was Charles Lee. And again, it's on YouTube. You can go look it up. Premiered about 3 weeks ago. And he talked about, okay, this year I'm working with three guys in particular, Chris Middleton, Grayson Allen, and Marjon Beauchamp. If you go look at their stats, and especially Middleton, like working his way back in, these guys all did great. Yeah, the Bucks got bounced, but Middleton was fantastic for them in the playoffs. So credit to Charles Lee for helping him come back. Not all his 100%, but when the three guys you're working with like exceed expectations, that says something. Grayson Allen, again, I do not like this fool as a player or as a person, but man, he really balled out and played well. He played well. He's another guy. If you look at his playoff numbers, you're like, okay, he got the job done, getting better defensively as well. And then Marjon Beauchamp didn't play in the playoffs, but he, again, exceeded expectations in the regular season. I think this is why Charles Lee is the top candidate. Is you see like, okay, we know the system he runs with Bud, like in what he's been under. Really stress 3-point shooting. That's one of their main things. You know,
successful system.
Yeah, you know they really get after on defense and have a couple different ways to do it. And like when they have the players, they know how to run that system. And then development. He's just been able to develop. And again, what I said with Jaron Collins, being able to work with different types of players, from the star and Chris Middleton to the role player and Grayson Allen to the guy that's still trying to find his way and Marjon Beauchamp. You can't say enough good about Charles Lee. I think it's the footprint, the video I sent you last time for the article is the YouTube one. Definitely go check that out because it's about an hour-long interview and he chronicles everything from, you know, coming up high school and schooling and then at Bucknell and then finding his way into the NBA as a head coach or associate coach, assistant coach.
Yeah, and I know when I was just doing a little bit of research, asked a couple people, what I'm hearing is similar with Jaron Collins. It's defense and being able to connect with people. But what I heard about Kevin Ollie, which just continues to follow, is his level of professionalism and his ability to really transcribe that to his players. But the things you said about Charles Lee, they're important because it is one of the most – it's about how known of a commodity are you. A lot of people are asking, what have you done for me lately? And really lately, the reason why Charles Lee's name has been kind of at the top and attached the most is because lately he's been one of those guys that has been doing the most. We're seeing guys like Chris Middleton continuing to look like Chris Middleton, despite the fact that he's 32 years old now. You know, that's key. You know, usually you're not coming in and working with a all-star, you know what I mean, as an assistant coach. You're working with the Grayson Allens. You know, you're working with the Beauchamps. Those are the guys you're working with. You're not working with Chris Middleton's. So it's awesome to see he made those types of, differences. And you see the pictures of him talking and working with Giannis and things of that nature. I like that he can also work with people from the top of the roster all the way down to the bottom of it. I don't think the Pistons have bad candidates. I don't.
Yeah, I know.
Really good candidates.
Yeah, that's the thing too. Everyone that's been announced is, except for the assistants on KC staff. Sorry, guys, but all the other ones that have been announced are like, these make sense, and these are guys that seem like they have qualities that really separate them and should be a head coach. I did want to touch on one other guy real quick. Pepega Jones talks about Chris Quinn. Really wanting Chris Quinn.
Shout out to Pega.
Yeah, we did a little bit in the like preparation of trying to figure out who the next coach is, and he was one name that was announced. The only thing I don't really know about Chris Quinn is like leadership ability. And again, you don't know these things unless you're in the building, but just what is publicly available. He's a little bit more of a quiet dude and isn't as well spoken and isn't as like upfront and take charge as a Jerron Collins and as a Charles Lee, where you can see that on display in anything in the public sphere, or even if you're just sitting on the sidelines at a game. The one thing I do know about Chris Quinn is he's incredibly smart, and all the Heat players comment on what he draws up and the plays and stuff that he's been able to run. So that at least is a good thing. And again, being like the bigger voice or being like this leader that is felt more isn't necessarily like 100% thing you need to be a head coach, because the last couple guys that have gotten a coaching job out of nowhere, Quinn Snyder, Will Hardy, and Mark Daigneault, they're not guys that are yelling, or they're not guys that are normally like these big personalities. They are more quiet. They are more known for their X's and O's. But then when they got the head job, you saw like, oh, they really are leaders because of the way they talk to the guys and the way they are able to say no when they need to say no and yes when they need to say yes.
So, man, I like that. You got time for about 5 minutes of B Miller versus?
Yeah. I mean, this one's an easy one for me, so it's not going to take long.
Hey, listen, I want to hear your perspective first on this one, man. Keep it real with me, and I'll share mine with you.
So, keeping it real, this is not a conversation to me. It should always be Scoot over Brandon Miller. I got two things for you. So, shout out to Draft Dummies. Go follow Draft Dummies on Twitter. Listen to the NBA Big Board podcast, which is normally where you can find Mr. Draft Dummies there. Brandon Miller, he sent out a tweet on March 24th. He said, Brandon Miller's ends up shooting 48% on twos this year. That's 116 out of 240 shots. But he shot just 38.5% on twos versus top 50 teams.
You said Miller, right?
Yeah, Brandon Miller. So whenever Brandon Miller and Alabama played a top 50 team, he went 55 of 143, which equaled out to 38.5%.
Steve, are we about to agree?
Against everybody else, he shot 63%, which was 61 of 97. So that's a big worry of like when he faced competition, he was shooting under 40% on 2-point shots. And then the other one is from Mavs Draft. Shout out Mavs Draft again. Go follow him. Another guy that's on NBA Big Board. He says, 2 stats worry me about Brandon Miller. Negative assist to turnover ratio, which to me is like whatever. You can find a ton of guys that ended up working out in the NBA that had a negative assist to turnover ratio in college or wherever they played before. The other one is in the half court. So that means shots that are not in transition, but shots where you get there, the defense is set, and you actually have to run a play. Brandon Miller in the half court is 39% at the rim per synergy. That's not good. Neither of those numbers are good when the competition went up and you're shooting under 40% from 2-point range. And then in the half court, when the game slows down and you're shooting 39% at the rim, that's not going to cut it. And the other thing is, if you look at his shot chart, Brandon Miller was 26 of 83 in the paint, which is 31.3%. Yes, I understand he's like a really good scorer, fantastic shooter. You cannot take that away from him. He or Grady Dick is the best shooter in the draft. There is no other even guy coming close. But man, shooting under 40% at the rim in the half court means you are a limited offensive player who's just going to put up jump shots.
Steve, are we agreeing here? Scoot it is?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it has to. Even if, to me, it was like, even if they didn't want Scoot, you have to take Scoot and then get somebody to trade for him, because we have these numbers. NBA team have these numbers, right?
Yeah, because honestly, you can't limit yourself. I believe Ivey's going to be a fine player. And I actually one of the ones who believe that the Pistons can find a way to make all three of them work to the tune of a good playoff team. But I also don't believe that you can sit here and run the risk of saying, well, we like Ivey, but seeing Scoot dunk all over your team every single time y'all play. sometimes you got the opportunity to take a player who's supposed to or has this kind of, potential to be, because the potential is that he's supposed to be a better player or has the potential to be a better player than Brandon Miller. You're not talking about being in this position again. You got to go personally for the BPA. And some of those numbers you brought up were some of the numbers that honestly didn't sway me, but helped lock it in. When I was just looking at the style of Brandon Miller, I like him. If we fall to third and fourth or whatever, and he's there, I'm not going to complain about it because I think he's a fine player. And it's always hard when we start talking about comparing these players because sometimes you find yourself inadvertently dissing or putting off another player. I like Brandon Miller.
Yeah,
I
and
like
it's
his
not
game too, but Scoot Miller is the guy that I'm like, yo, the way he finishes in the half, like I was looking at some of those half-court numbers and finishing at the rim and such. There's some of those numbers he has to pick up. I think finishing at the rim through contact, finishing at the rim with people like in his defenders around. Scoot has to get much better at that. But just overall finishing at the rim, he was like 20 or 30 points higher than Brandon Miller. That was wild to me. We see how much this NBA spacing helped Ivy. We saw how much, and then this is something I kept drumming last year. Like, guys, this is actually why I'm kind of high on Ivy. I feel like Scoot's going to be able to have an opportunity, and I know he's not as tall. I know he doesn't necessarily have the build, but I believe that his athleticism and his speed is something that this version of the NBA caters to. And I just believe that you give yourself that opportunity to say we can either make them work, or if both these guys are good and we feel like we need to trade one, like Cleveland had to do with their two guards, hey, you set yourself up nicely. Now your asset at least list in your base is better than what it could have been. So I'm actually cool with that one, man. Scoot for me if we're keeping it real.
Yeah, and to me too, like Scoot is number 2 no matter what because of those numbers and being able to run a professional offense at 17 years old and then in the 18, like that's just rarefied air is really good. Athlete, advanced mid-range shooter, is assist to turnover ratio is almost like 2-1. He had 164 assists and I believe it was something like 88 turnovers. So it was pretty close, but 30% assist percentage. And let me try and find that. Let's see. So this is, regular season and showcase this year, 35.7% assist percentage. Yeah, like this guy knows how to create shots at a high level. The 3-point shooting is concerning. You want that to get better and be more of a thing because people are just going to sag off him to attack him, number one. And also as a catch and shoot guy, he has work to do there. That's more of the thing is, especially if he goes to a team like us on the Pistons, you're not just going to be giving him the ball to go create all the time. If he goes somewhere like the Spurs, then that's less of a problem because you want that to come around later.
That's a great point.
You're going to be giving him the ball a little bit more. The big thing for me on Scoot is there have been comments from like Sam Vecini, from like Coach Spins of the Box and One, and even the guys over at No Ceilings, that he was bored this year, and it looked like that on the film. It's always tough to me of like how to gauge that and how to really grade that. It has to be a red flag too of like, okay, he got bored, so that's why you can see some of his numbers go down from last year. Like, is that going to be a thing in the NBA, right? Like, so what happens when
those players
just
scare
not,
me sometimes, man.
And it's part of the reason why, like, even though I think he's talented, like for Detroit in particular, it would be a good idea to consider taking trade options because there's going to be somebody out there that is in love with him and his talent does warrant that. So get as much as you can. Like if Orlando calls with 6 and 11 and then they offer somebody else like a Cole Anthony, like, yeah, that seems like a better deal to throw in there, right?
You're trying to ruin Cole Anthony's whole day.
Hey, he and Cade are buddies though. Like I know he's got that competitive juice in him, but Isaiah Stewart and Wiseman hated each other coming up too. So
true that, man. You're right. And honestly, I'm not one of those guys who's like, I hate Cole Anthony. He just Detroit, man. If you come here, you work hard, you got skill, you got talent. We sitting here talking about those guys that got that something in their chest. You know what I mean? It's like Cole Anthony plays like that. Both ways, defense and offense. He's trying to get after it. He got some strides to go. Obviously, but that wouldn't be a bad thing if we're sitting here talking about, okay, if we were going to trade Scoot does 6'11" in a player this year make a difference? Does that make something? Now, with the way that we know Troy Weaver can find the guys that he kind of wants all over a draft board, we've seen drafts that I thought were kind of weak. We saw drafts that were strong, and I thought he's fine with players second round and first round, from Livers to Cade and everything in between. That honestly have really, really moved the needle. The 6'11" and Cole Anthony, for you, is that enough, or do you think is that kind of just something he could do if they were to trade? I believe, man, that's so tough. I get what you're doing, 6'11" and Cole, because you don't know.
Well, to me, too, the picks number 3 through 7, I think all of those guys that are going to go, or at least on my board, 3 through 7, any of those guys could go number 3. I feel like if any of those guys go number 3, it's fine and it's definitely warranted. So for me, it's Asar Thompson, it's Cam Whitmore, it's Jarris Walker, it's Brandon Miller, and it is also Amen Thompson in there. So I think there's five other guys in there to me that if you go down to 6, or ideally, because Orlando was supposed to get 5 and 10, that would have been ideal to me, is like trade down from 2 to get 5 and 10, and then another useful player that's really good, like a Cole Anthony, who, maybe you can't play him in the starting lineup, but he's going to be your 6th man and get you a ton of buckets, improving defensively, improving as a shooter. And then you can flip him as an asset too later on. So that would just be my thing, is like, I think that works out better. And also the gap between Scoot and these other guys in that 3-7, like Cam Whitmore would probably be the best example of it, or Jarris Walker, one of those two. Like, they could end up being just as impactful as Scoot. So I would rather, and then you get another player on the end at 11 that could be like a Taylor Hendricks or Jordan Hawkins, that you just find somebody that works. Even Grady Dick might be there, and you get like maybe the best shooter in the draft, plus another guy like Asar or Cam or Jarris or Brandon Miller if he falls there, and Thompson. Like, that seems like a better plan to me.
Yeah. When you kind of put it out that way, especially with some of the players that we covered, and those videos are going to be coming out. We got some exclusive content that's going to be out on the Woodward Sports website for this draft season coming up here. And we've covered Jarris Walker. We covered both the Thompson twins. And if you're telling me that we could wind up with one of the Thompson twins potentially, and Jarris Walker potentially, and Cole Anthony, that's pretty nice, bro. That would be pretty nice. I know that would be honestly like the dream of the dream, but it doesn't seem as far-fetched when you actually start talking about some of these players and how you're already hearing some people say, oh, well, this person could take a slide. Well, that's great for the Pistons. And there's always a top 10 reach. There's always one of those guys like, what? They took who? So it's that this year's 6 and 11 might be, if you're not in love, the Pistons fall at 2 or even 3. Because if somebody reaches for Brandon Miller and scoots on the board at 3, that number 3 draft pick could be very, very, very valuable, bro.
Yeah, I think both of those guys, like Brandon Miller, has these things in his profile to me that worry me, and I don't think he's that number 1 scorer dynamic. I've heard the name KD thrown out with Brandon Miller a few times, and I'm like, he ain't KD. Come on now. He just doesn't have that creation ability inside the arc. KD, again, is 1 of 1. The other one that I would think might be a possibility now, Portland, I think, has like 12 and 13 or something like that. That's too low to move up to 2 or 3. But if the Pistons got Scoot, and then they could facilitate some kind of move to where Portland ends up with Scoot Henderson, and then Dame gets to move where he wants to go, or somewhere that can help him win a title. And then the Pistons get back 12 and 14 or whatever it is, and they get somebody like a Shaden Sharp, then they go, that would be fantastic, right?
That would be. And you know what? Troy Weaver's not afraid to go after those even recent draft picks. So I wouldn't even be afraid of that. Like, I wouldn't even be surprised if something like that happened. And honestly, I would welcome that type of stuff. Hey, I don't think people like I don't think like people like your trade proposal would call Anthony in there, man.
Hey, I wanted it to be Franz Wagner, but I don't think they would give up Franz Wagner. They would have to feel like Scoot is the next Derrick Rose or somebody like that. And if they did, then like, give me Franz, or I don't want anything else. That would be who I would ask for first, though. Is like, I want your 2 picks. I want Franz, but what you end up with is somebody like Cole Anthony. Again, who else is on that Magic roster that you can say like, okay, I'm going to give you this player that you think super highly of. To me, if they think that highly of him, then I want a player I know is going to work out and will help me right now. Wendell Carter might be another one, but again, with the glut of big men here, that one might be a little bit harder. But Wendell Carter works for what the team wants to do, and he's everything that we talked about earlier in terms of being a screener and like a pick and pop guy, right? So that could work as well.
Yeah. For the people don't like Anthony.
Yeah, I get it, but man, he's an up and comer. I know what he said about the city, but you got to just look at him as assets. So,
and that's the thing of it. It's like, man, on this level, man, it's like, sheesh, you got to think about it as it relates to basketball and the business of it all. And it's like,
and if he were younger, I would say Gary Harris all day. I'm a gigantic Sparty fan in terms of like guys I know that are prepared to come in the NBA. Like every year, my philosophy for the second round is always who's coming out of Michigan State. But Gary Harris is a little bit too old now to like really be worth trading away. Somebody like Scoot or Brandon Miller at this time. Gary Harris, 28 years old. But if I could get like Gary Harris and then you're trading me like 2 or 3 other picks down the line, then maybe, yeah, because Gary Harris
is Gary Harris too old? You know, if they're talking about where this team is trying to go and they want the young veterans now, they want those kind of prime veterans. They told and they asked Jaime, can you try and step into this role? And he's like, I'm like 26, 27. I guess they want me to be a vet. Gary Harris is somebody who kind of fits that role.
Yeah, but you're still talking about like a high-level asset, right? You're saying like, okay, I'm trading you this guy that you think is like John Wall or Derrick Rose. I need more than a guy that I know is an established role player.
But could you sneak Gary Harris and like another role player with the 2 picks?
Yeah, maybe like Bol because I know they wanted Bol, right? Like Gary Harris, Bol, and then the 2 picks. Maybe. Or I know this one is more of an odd fit, but like Markelle Fultz, I wouldn't do it. But if they thought like he could run the second unit, I'm still scared of his long-term health potential.
Yeah. Markelle Fultz is somebody I've wanted the Pistons to just take a freaking flyer on, but then when they got Killian Hayes, it was like it almost would seem redundant. I like his skill, I like his flashes and his ability, I like when his athleticism is going. He's just as a hard guard to keep up with, and he kind of has that same flow as like D'Angelo Russell. He just kind of has that same kind of get to his game. But man, what the heck? What's this man's? You know what? Somebody about to get put in timeout. He's getting put in timeout here talking about Cade Cunningham. We're gonna stop there right now, bro. The people still going. Hey, I like this one right here, yo. As we kind of wrapping up. There was a couple of names I saw: Sam Cassell, Steve Nash. What do you think about Steve Nash?
I don't know, to be honest. It's hard because that Brooklyn situation was just a terrible situation to be thrown into as a first-time head coach.
Phil Jackson to like coach that situation.
Yeah, I don't really feel like Nash was running anything, right? Because it's KD and Kyrie. If it's me, I'm staying out of the way. It's always like, yo, big fella, what do you want to run today? And like, what are you guys feeling out there? Because there's such high-level creators and they think the game at a different level. You just don't get in the way of that. So I don't really know about Nash. Smart player, obviously one of the best point guards to ever put it down. Not in my top 5 though, so don't ask that question. And then Sam Cassell. I don't know. Like Sam Cassell's been around so long as an assistant. It's odd that he just hasn't gotten more love. I don't know. I can't really speak to that one because I don't really want anybody associated with the Doc Rivers coaching tree. Not gonna lie, that would just be my gut.
You know what? I'm gonna trust your gut on that one too. I am, because that's a really, really good point. Sam Cassell, really good, smart basketball player throughout his career. But you're right, man. Assistant that long, you got people who have been assistants for a lot less time, like Chauncey, who are coming in and kind of just passing you up.
Chauncey wasn't even an assistant. He came like straight off the street or out of the TV booth and into the head coaching role. I think part of it is like personality and being able to manage management, superstars, role players under there, and your assistants.
You said it. Because Steve Nash, like, what is he going to do? If he's just a figurehead and you think, hey, we got these smart players like KD and Kyrie and whatnot, it's going to just work itself out. But then all of a sudden, who are these players going to be? Because we know that there was some contention. And it started to leak out into the media. This is where a good coach comes into play. This is where when people think, what did Phil Jackson do? Well, who's handling when the players are disgruntled? The stars. Who's handling when there's dissension there? Who's handling when there needs to be a play between this person and that person? Hearing Kobe, yeah, man, Russ and Jesus and Shaq talk about, the what Phil Jackson meant to their relationship, how many different things that he fused together and defused to be able to keep this team kind of on a championship pace and championship level. It's like those things matter when you're talking about having a coach and picking the right coach. Because look, if they're gonna go where we're hoping they can go, they're gonna need a coach that can definitely guide this shit from top to bottom. But man, I think we talked it all out today.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Any last words?
Hopefully by the end of this week, and when we talk to y'all next time, there will be a head coach for the Detroit Pistons. Hopefully it's Darren Collins or Charles Lee. I would be happy with either of them, to be honest.
So,
and even if it is Chris Quinn that snuck in, those are the three that, like, when they first were announced, I'm like, yeah, sign me up for any of them.
Yeah, I agree with you there, man. Hey, look, if you guys got here late, definitely go back. Let us know what you think of the different topics. Cade and Jaden as a backcourt. What you think of Ivy and Duran's development this season? The coaching search update, as well as Brandon Miller versus Scoop. And honestly, what Steve brought up as it relates to if the Pistons did decide to trade down. And you know what? Shout out to 313 Sports Guru. Shout out to a lot of the regulars that were in the comments. If you guys can, it's always a blessing when you all like the page, man. Like the video, subscribe, share it. Those are the ways that you can say thank you, support, or just rock out with us. Like, it's always a great time. We're grateful, and I'm ecstatic and excited. And look, I got to do this on the stream. Steve, keep crushing the content, bro, man. If y'all can just, wherever you are, give a little clap up for Steve. He's been crushing the draft content. Last year, he was behind the scenes, and he helped really, really, really satiate and platform our draft coverage, which got, honestly, this Woodward Pistons channel bumping. That's when our views went up through the roof, and I was grateful to Steve for that. This season, it was about really getting him on the other side of things, and he's been doing this for some time. He handles a lot of different aspects of, from writing to the video to the content to the research to the collaboration to getting with other professionals in this to honestly sitting down and just looking. So definitely, Steve, thank you, brother. I appreciate all that you're doing. If you guys haven't been familiar with it, definitely go check out the Woodward Pistons NBA Draft Preview Show. His box, we got it themed up really nice. It's that nice kind of Detroit St. Cecilia green. You'll see it. Thank you again, Steve. I just wanted to make sure I gave you some roses real quick. Thank you, brother.
Yeah, appreciate it. I keep asking Joe back here if I'm doing a good job, but he just doesn't get off the phone. Always working, man. Always working.
Thank you. Hey, and thank you all again for being here. Shout out to everybody within the Woodward Pistons family as well. We got some exciting stuff on the way. Till next time, y'all.